rings of power. The gift that no one wanted, but the gift that keeps giving. Oh dear God. So, this is why the showrunners ignored Tolkien's writing on the creation of Mordor. Yikes. You know, the scene where Galadriel gets hit by a volcano and just covered in some dust. Or Galadriel. I mean, this is funny. So, let's get into this article. I am not going to bother reading the article out, because you can see it on screen now. And I'm going to just pick out some key points. A huge theme in Tolkien is the environmentalism and the way machines and industrialization destroys the land. No, it's not. It's really not. There is a reason for Mordor, and that's not it. That's really not it. And I'm sure that element is in the back notes, but it's not a huge theme, air quotes. And it just goes to show that that's actually what you took out of it and what you centered on, because that's your opinion, rather than actually adapting what you had the rights to when it's clearly written in the appendices. Galadriel being responsible for the Elven Rings, for example, is not a Tolkien thing. Then, we talked about the poisoning of the land, which starts in the first episode with the cow, then the tunnels, and then up in the air, and then it just builds towards a geologically realistic way of igniting the mountain. Does it have to be realistic? It is fantasy, but also this is not how Mordor started, and you can find the creation of Mordor in countless Tolkien texts, several wikis, and even on the appendices of the DVD and Blu-ray of Lord of the Rings movies. My God. But it's this last line. Our villain sees the orcs as his people, and they deserve a home where the sun doesn't torment them. We're hoping it will take people by surprise. Do you not know what orcs are? He torments them. They're not his people. They're his servants. They are brutish beings that literally are his servants. In some notes and some canon texts, they are also corrupted elves, but that's a whole different debate. They're trying to sympathise the orcs, and they did a half-orc elf character, which is actually impossible when they're technically the same thing. But anyway, rant aside, the stupidity of this interview and this article is not only goes to show that they don't care, but also their own thoughts on environmentalism and sort of this twisting of the Industrial Revolution into something it wasn't, because I hate to tell people this, and I know it's a horrible thing to say, and I mean this. People suffer. Every civilization is built on the bones of another. You build to the future, people suffer. It's nature. This has gone on for thousands upon thousands of years. Just this whole sort of anti-industrialization thing, which is ridiculous, but also the fact that they are intentionally sympathizing the orcs and changing the writings of Tolkien to do so, trying to make them out sympathetic character, is completely absurd. And it just feels like they are desperately trying to avoid the air quotes problematic elements of Tolkien. The thing is with Tolkien's work, and this is going to shock a lot of people, and I'm going to say this, Tolkien didn't like allegory. You can read countless interviews. And I love the fact that people are now trying to skew Tolkien's work, like saying, well, it's not a mythology of Britain, of Anglo-Saxon England. He said it himself. He didn't like allegory. He didn't like anything on that front. And ultimately, they stripped the Tolkien from Tolkien. They also stripped the metaphor and meaning of Tolkien's work. They also stripped the Catholicism out of Tolkien's work, which is also fundamental to the piece. The showrunners had no interest in creating a Tolkien show. They had no interest in creating The Lord of the Rings. They wanted the IP, the name, to sell it to a bunch of blue-tick idiots on Twitter and fanboys who cry about it and troll people, including myself, on the internet. You know who you are, and I'm sure you will watch this. And this is the thing that I find absolutely hilarious. In changing the creation of Mordor, they stripped out its meaning. They stripped out its fundamental importance. They stripped it out to a point where it's volcano go boom, Galadriel survives, and it just feels... it's hollow. It's empty. I mean, no one, elf, man, orc, hobbit, would survive a volcano. That's what I burst out laughing when I watched that scene, and I remember when they got to that point in the show, and I was like, what the hell are you doing? And before anyone says it, I didn't watch it on Amazon. Can't say how, but I didn't watch it on Amazon. I'm not giving them my views. This just shows the level of narcissism within these writers. It just shows this sort of disregard for the works that are so fundamental. And when you are reading and adapting a work that is basically the fundamental backbone of modern fantasy, despite what Daniel Green tells you, this is it. If you strip out its meaning, the metaphors, you strip out its soul. And Rings of Power was a soulless cash-in by a large corporation, and all the people that support Rings of Power cry about Amazon being an evil corporation and overworking the people, delivery drivers and the warehouse workers, but they fan this as if it's the second coming of Christ. The hypocrisy is mind-blowing, and I just, like, articles like this just show the complete disregard. And I use this phrase way too many times in my videos, but if you look at the making of this show and the interviews and how they adapted, air quotes, the text, which they didn't even use what they had the rights to, really, it's cultural Marxism, because it strips out. It strips everything out. It strips everything. It makes it just empty. And to disregard the writings of Tolkien on something that's actually quite fundamentally important, Mordor, what can I say to this other than basically they're a bunch of idiots? So, yeah, tell me what you think in the comments below. This rant is over. I know this wasn't a video, it was a rant, but my god, are these people just insufferable twats.